very warm welcome to all of you. It's really a pleasure to be with you here. And I first would like to thank Peter for his presentation that leads the way into what I'm going to try to present to all of you today. The title of my keynote is ISA² From Past to Present. Although I look more to the future, but I think that your words, Peter, was quite inspiring in terms of what the future reserves to us. So I borrowed one slide from you. And this is the slide that says, how does this relate to interoperability and ISA²? And when I was using this, I said, my God, what does Peter mean with that? How does this beautiful landscape relate to ISA²? And then I said, this is like Magritte, and we are in the homeland of Magritte. Ah, ceci n'est pas une pipe. And in reality, what Peter wanted to say was not this as a picture, but this as digital and e-government. Peter, thank you very much, but indeed, when we talk about landscapes, I rather think about something different from you. I'm sorry, I'm coming from Portugal. So anytime I have to think about a landscape, summertime comes to my mind. So that is a reflection after summertime. Because on the 4th of July, we launched a very wide consultation in Europe around the notion of summertime. Do you know what happened when we reached the 9th of July? We had already 500,000 of answers. Do you know what happened when we reached 16th of August? We had 4.5 million answers. And those answers have to be treated, and they have to be analyzed. And you know what? Just after 12th of September, during the State of the Union speech, the Commission came clean in making a proposal for seasonal clock changes. Well, I find this impressive. And I find it even more impressive because this has been using the EU survey, an open source tool developed by ISA² Programme. That tool allows you not just to make consultations in your own language, but allows this small team behind to process it in a speedy and meaningful way. What a better example of the ISA importance than making a reflection after summertime. Because also, this is not just one element, it's actually the new normal when we talk about shaping political priorities. We are not anymore in the old era where we would dream our policies without having a direct contact with the citizen. And why that? Because in fact, our citizens and businesses are today digitally enabled. Because we need to address more complex and more integrated challenges. And indeed, it's not just the narrow scope of the public administrations that are relevant in this context, because new actors participate actively in the design of the services to bridge the relation between public administration and citizens, startups, NGOs, individuals. All of them will contribute using, for example, open data to make sure that new apps are available to establish a more effective and efficient relation between citizens, business, and the public administration. And the new generation, the millennials, well, by definition, they are more than digitally friendly. They are innovation friendly. And everything that exists in reality as a digital twin, cars, instruments, IoT in general, everything as a parallel in the digital world, thus allowing us to monitor and to take decisions. And ultimately, AI is with us. So, what are then the challenges on governments when we have this new reality, this new normal? Is that actually there is different expectations, and the public value that they have to deliver has to be achieved in a different way. And that's why the title of your presentation is so inspiring, because you said digital in e-government. You know, we are in this e-government move towards digital government, i.e. we are really changing the processes that were used in the past to make sure that the digital reality takes over and we do establish relations in a different way. And obviously, we do more than just being user-centric. We are actually user-driven because we bring them to us in co-creating the services that we need for the future. And all of that is possible because one important new thing: data. Availability of data with the necessary quality, with the necessary availability, with curation, and with fast transmission, 5G and the likes, to move data from one place to the other, and then an amazing ability to process, make in fact that data is actually transforming extremely rapidly our societies. And therefore, public administrations are simply expected to follow the same trend. This digital transformation that actually then starts from the data, and the data that is used to inspire the decisions, a data that is to optimize, transform, and create new services, to use artificial intelligence, to use advanced analytics, to make sure that we are more predictive in the way we exercise our roles, to make sure that we make our workforce skills adapted, to make sure that we exploit digital ecosystems where we work in partnership with private, non-governmental entities, with startups, etc., to create this digital ecosystem to provide the best services to the citizens, and that we continuously reorganize our own organizations, re-engineering the processes. And in this context, be it mobile or not, we are very much talking about digital platforms. And what is important when we talk about digital platforms? Reference architectures, standards leading to interoperability. Luis, you're right. It's probably a mistake to have a word that is more than 3 syllables. But do you know what? It was done in purpose. Because now, although you may not be able to pronounce it, everybody knows what is interoperability. And everybody knows that the ISA program is the interoperability par excellence program. A quick roundup about what means interoperability. You are all familiar, all aware. But this is our modus in which diverse organizations that have different cultural environments, different linguistic environments, that can work together and attain common goals. And this implies obviously that we exchange information amongst them. It is important that we understand not just the information that we exchange, but we understand what is the meaning, the knowledge behind that. And so that we cooperate in Europe in a seamless way. Like I said, ISA² is the interoperability program. As a consequence, we support digital solutions that actually enable the public administrations and the businesses and the citizens to benefit from this cross-border interoperability, to benefit from these cross-sector public services. A word of caution here. When we are talking in Europe, we very often talk about cross-border. But there are plenty of unknown, undefined borders between sectors within the administration in the same country, in the same region, in the same city. Sometimes it's more difficult to exchange information between the mobility department of a city and the environment department of the same city than between the environment department of all the cities in Europe. Those artificial borders are as well the target of our interoperability frameworks as the cross-border interoperabilities. But when we talk about interoperability, it's very important that we look at it not just like, oh yeah, I understand, that systems have to fit together, I mean, electronically, mechanically. No, we need to have an holistic perspective. The holistic perspective, I'll come back to that in a second, is fundamental to us. And I reiterate again, cross-sector, cross-border, and above all, user-driven. So when we talk about our program, we are on the business of identifying, creating, and finding available and helping you to use solutions, interoperability solutions. And we work with you. Peter, we would like to work even more. You know, the ISA program is a very small program. It's very important, but very small. We know pretty well what we will need to do beyond the ISA. We need to have our interoperability solutions adopted everywhere. So we may need more take-up actions. We need to make sure that we work with you to identify where are the difficulties, the non-interoperable solutions that need to be addressed. All of that, as Peter said, it's a political decision, but we hope that in the context of the Digital Europe program, in the aspects that are more related to public administrations, we'll find the resources that will allow us to continue on this and progress further on those objectives. The ISA program, and Peter mentioned also it from the early beginnings, Louis, this is not the X road, it's actually a more S road, and I pay tribute to your contribution to the X road in Estonia. But it shows that it has been a consistent approach, and we have been always moving one step ahead. Let me give you an example. When we published the new interoperability framework, it is different from the previous one. Why? Look at my keyword before, data. Because the new interoperability framework focused much more on data and on semantic interoperability than the previous one, because this is the new normal. Now, interoperability, and I said it, let's look at it from an holistic perspective. Means that we don't look at one particular perspective of the interoperability. 4 perspectives are quite fundamental. I would almost say, being an engineer, that maybe the easiest one is the one that is in the bottom of this slide. It's the technical interoperability. You understand that it's not as easy as that. Multiple standards, but easier. But then the meaning of our information exchanges and semantic appears extremely important. And then organizational. who actually represents or can provide me information when, for example, I talk between different countries, business registered to business registered. They need to understand the organization and also the semantics of the information exchanged. And on top of that, legal interoperability. And I tell you, I think that you should be quite adamant on that one. We are leaders. Europe is leaders on this holistic perspective in interoperability. Our interoperability framework is much appreciated, sometimes more outside Europe than in Europe. It's much appreciated. Emmanuel, that is here somewhere, I don't see him, he was recently in Japan and Korea, and people say, hold on a second, show us this European interoperability framework. And the Australians, Homeland Louise, they said, well, let's discuss, it will be important for us. And the colleagues in South America, they do not just say that, they are actually using it. We have established cooperation with them, and they are using it. OECD appreciates enormously that. That's part of this holistic perspective and huge achievement under the EIF, European Interoperability Framework concept. But the ISA program is not just this framework, it's actually solutions. Now, it will be absolutely tedious to be able to provide you with details in all of those solutions. But you see the colors that are there, and those colors actually represent areas. And obviously, I made sure that I provide you one slide that you cannot read from them, then you cannot ask, you can see it afterwards. But you see that there is, for example, the green has to do with semantic interoperability. You have this mauve thing that is, as you can see by talking about e-prior, well, they relate to e-procurement and the invoicing. We have also geospatial when we talk about, things like registry, or when we talk about generic enablers that are e-Trust or TESTA as an infrastructure. Those are solutions. Those are solutions being used. Now, all of you have in your package one little booklet. It doesn't describe completely the solutions, but it describes the solutions and provides you with testimonies of people that has been successfully using these solutions. One of them is the European Interoperability Reference Architecture. And there is a testimony of one friend from Belgium working in the digital agency that says, we did not just use it, we recommended it widely to all the administrations being local or regional in Belgium. So it really brings efficiency gains. Well, I mentioned already the EU survey. I gave you an example, but there are plenty of other users of the EU survey. I could give you the example of the online collection software. This is used for the European Citizen Initiative, another normal on the way of interacting with the citizens in Europe. And you know what? This software, open source again, allows all of us to have this European Citizen Initiative not just in our own language, but asking what is relevant and appropriate from the different countries to identify the citizen that participates in this citizen initiative. And be aware that the type of information that Portugal and Belgium and Spain have to give is different. So the OCS, as we call it, will provide you not just a linguistic approach, but the fit-for-purpose forms to collect the relevant information. But more, will allow also a posteriori the public administration to validate each one of the citizens, because it provides a very useful interface between that data and their own registries. I could go on and on and on. Just the last one, the IMAPS, a maturity model. It's very important. It's an online questionnaire, simple. 30 minutes and you comply with it. But more than just filling the forms, what is important is the feedback, is that this gives you a sense of the maturity of your organization, but gives you concrete recommendations of what you can do to improve your situation. Those are just examples. You find much more here, like Tester, for example. I mean, you name them. So, where are we on the ISA program? Why is it so important, independent of the concrete results that it delivers so far? It is important, and Peter already alluded to that one, because this is part of a big puzzle. It contributes to the digital single market. Well, we trust that in the future, the single market will be by definition digital. So it is at the core of the digital, at the core of the notion of single market in Europe. It contributes actively to the government action plan. And the European interoperability framework is a key structural element for public administrations in Europe. Now, it is not isolated, and I said it is small. It is small, but it's like in the core. It's a kind of nucleus of what we need to do for public administrations. But yes, it interacts with CEF. A lot of the things that are tested, a lot of the things that are, say, generated within ISA, move at a later stage to the CEF to become more operational, to get scale. I think that, Francesco, are going to mention one example that yesterday you touched briefly with me and with Emmanuel, that is in an area that I don't think that you would imagine, you know. I suppose that you are going to refer to the how do you update the maps. So you will see that from wherever we can imagine, and from so different entities like JRC or municipalities, all of us use solutions. But those solutions are just started in the ISA program. And then we need to expand them to get more countries involved. You know, good results of a pilot need to be extended. And that's where the CEF program comes. And it will be nice, Francesco, if you make reference to that one and when you make your speech. And also, when we talk about programs that are imminently operational, regional funds, you know, they are already supporting interoperable solutions all over the place. They may even be called upon to be even more active, more proactive in that front. When we talk about SRSS, that is our structural reform initiative, it's amazing how countries are asking us to support initiatives that do need interoperable solutions. And we provide what we call technical assistance. This means we put experts in contact with the countries to make sure that they can profit from what is being done. And ISA obviously impacts on things like open data, PSI directive, once only principle, digital single gateway that was already mentioned. Top on our priorities. Just one example that is so important these days, because we passed in September a very important milestone, the EIDAS. This is just a bit of the genesis and implementation of the EIDAS. It started as part of the research program in FP7. That is the seed, the concept, you know. Actually, by the way, our good friend in Austria was particularly active in the Stork. That was then one of the milestones to bring these ideas that were generated from the research perspective into a pilot. And then ISA came in and helped it. And then after ISA, yes, CEF and building blocks and this signature and other things have been put in place. And then later on, we need the legal framework to do, in our case, a regulation and the current and future implementation. So the ISA program is not by accident that is here in the middle. Well, it is in the middle of the strategy for Europe. It is the center of this strategy. Why did I take this example? Because EIDAS, his signature, is absolutely the right mechanism to bring us from a program into policy. And I would like now to bring the Tallinn Declaration that already Peter brought here. The Tallinn Declaration is like a new impetus for public administrations in Europe. It actually it follows the Malmö Declaration, but it becomes much more concrete. It gives targets, and actually targets also the Commission, the institutions, the member states, etc. So the Tallinn Declaration, as Peter already mentioned, has a number of objectives. Some of them are of utmost importance for us, the once-only principle. All what we do in data aims to comply and make sure that our citizens in business do not need to provide twice the same information. As simple as that. How can I ensure that a business operating in a far distant country or a citizen living abroad does not need to provide the same information if we don't exploit the European interoperability framework? How can we do it? It's just at the center. And then obviously security, trust, digital by default. And one of them is interoperability by default. Go and see it. Go and see the details. They are unambiguous. They ask us to reinforce, to make sure that we adopt the European interoperability framework and give us concrete deadlines. So we are so glad that in some sense, I think that I can claim that the ISA program inspired the Tallinn Declaration, as well as the Tallinn Declaration gives the political context in which the ISA program is going to evolve in the future. And obviously, I don't want to burn the speeches of my commissioner and the speeches of my Director General. But I think that Peter mentioned what will be the possible future after 2020 in the new MFF. And he gave us a hint on the Digital Europe program on the top right. And I give you a further hint on some of the public administration related topics, although you can't see very well, I presume. But you see there that you have bring digital technology to the public sector. This is a very strong statement. It's an objective. So when we do a midterm review of the ISA program, we are basically where the arrow is. We know where we want to be, and we have a challenge to bridge this gap, not just for the sake of bridging, but influencing the future, making sure that the future is more certain than just a piece of paper. And so a lot of things may come. I don't have the crystal ball, neither I want to replace the workshop of tomorrow. But when my colleagues challenged me to do this keynote, I said, well, data, once only principle, semantic, technical interoperability. We need to do more training. We need to talk to more people. We need to make sure that people is aware and using it. We need that the take-up is much broader than it is right now. But Peter drove us into things like mobile government, analytics, artificial intelligence, blockchains. Let's start doing it now as we have been doing in the past. We are the seed of something that will be great in the future. ISA needs to invest more in new technologies impacting on public administrations. And then I alluded to some of the synergies with other programs. Well, I talked before about interoperability between sectors. We should play the game. There is no borders between programs. Borders are elastic borders. We need to help each other. ISA is ready to support CEF because it's a natural continuation. Is ready to support, programs like SRSS. Well, I tell you an anecdote. My commissioner, and the Commission General, as a priority to the Balkans, Western Balkans. We talk very much with the countries around us, the neighboring countries. For them to be part, more formal, less formal, to this concept of European Union, there is a number of prerequisites. Do you know what? The world is digital, European Interoperability Framework. That's where they need to start. And that's we have an obligation to go there and work with them to make sure that we understand what is the interoperability framework and how it favors the cooperation between public administrations. Further exploit the potential of the European interoperability framework. I mentioned the world is eager to learn from us. Let's profit from this very honored position. And ultimately, what are we really trying here? We are trying to make sure that we seed the creation of a government interoperability platform. Those are the thoughts that I leave with you, and they don't commit anybody else in the Commission. And before closing this, and thanking you very much, let me just say that what I really would like you to retain today is that for digital public administrations, I emphasize digital public administrations, interoperability fundamental. The ISA program, the ISA² program, small is beautiful. Small but central. The midterm review, the perfect moment where we can influence not just the transition, but what the next MFF will be. You are in a beautiful place. We have around you the best brains. Be inspired. Thank you very much.
Thank you.